my name is Kaylie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Okay everybody, hello, long time no see. I know that I've been gone for quite a minute now. So if you guys didn't know, I went to Pittsburgh for 2 weeks and then I came back down here for a week, which was when I filmed the last video because I thought I had enough videos pre-filmed, and then I went back to Pittsburgh. Turns out I didn't have enough videos pre-filmed, and then I came home and I have just been trying to get back into a routine of filming, and it has been psychotic. I'm really sad that the streak was broken, but we are back and I am determined to get back on track with everything. Also, because of how long it's been since I've posted, I'm gonna try to film some videos and put out a few this week. So yeah, I apologize guys, but don't worry, I'm here now and I do not plan on going anywhere for a fat minute because just no. Also, before we get into today's story time, I would like to put a trigger warning in here. There is going to be mention of self-harm, and I will not be putting trigger warnings in the story because it comes up a few times. It's nothing graphic or anything like that. It's just that I would be interrupting the story and putting timestamps, and yeah, so if that makes you uncomfortable, please exit out of this video. Also, there will be mention of animal abuse. I will be putting a timestamp in for that one because it's mentioned like once, and yeah, I don't know about you guys, but usually hearing about any type of animal abuse or anything like that makes me super sad. So yeah, but without further ado, let me bring you guys up close. There we go. Okay, also I am going to be wearing my headphones in this video because I realized that whenever I have like the noise cancellation headphones on, it makes it easier to film because I'm not. That's right, I lost my AirPods actually. Fuck! Guys. Okay, so if you see my AirPods go on at some point in the video, it's because I found them and because it's easier for me to film so I'm not listening to all this background noise. It's annoying. Also, for those of you who may be new here, we're going to do my quick usual little rundown. For most of the video, I will be looking in this direction because my mirror's over here and I would like to see what I'm doing. I do tell these story times at a first person point of view, so if you don't like that, then you can leave.
There's the door. There's the door, bitch!
And these story times are sent in by anonymous people. Okay, let's get into today's story time. Okay, y'all, good news. I found my AirPods, thankfully, so here we are. Okay, so story time about how my parents blame me for ruining my brother's life, because nobody ever wants to take accountability for their own actions. Are we surprised? Absolutely not. Okay, so a little background information. I was 17 whenever this whole situation happened, and I was a senior in high school. But per usual, before I get into the main situation, I have to give you guys full details on how this all came about. So just try to keep up, please. So for starters, I am the oldest sibling of 3, including myself, if that makes sense. I think it does. But I have a twin sister named Mia. Yes, I am older. I was born like 5 minutes before her. Okay. And then I have a little brother named Elijah, and he was born 3 years after Mia and myself. Now let me give you some background information on both of my siblings. We're gonna start with Mia. Mia was like half angel, half devil, because in school she would never get in trouble. She was the most amazing kid, but then at home she was a fucking demon. Literally, like on demon time 24/7 for no fucking reason since she came out of the fucking womb. And it wasn't like she was doing stuff like breaking shit and whatever. No, she liked starting problems between everybody in the family. By the way, guys, if my foundation looks like it's too dark, it's because I went and got some foundation from Sephora and I bought my summer color, which I don't know if it's my summer color because I haven't gotten this foundation in so long, but just go with it, okay? Because I know. Chances are, I know. So yeah, her favorite hobby was starting drama between the family. I'm just gonna give you one example of how she has started issues between everyone in the fucking family. Like, this sounds so bad, basically because it is, but one day she comes home from school and for no particular reason at all, she goes down to the kitchen and she tells my mom that my little brother sexually assaulted her. Yeah, mind you, at this time, she was 12 and my brother was 9. Obviously, everybody fucking freaks out. My mom is going berserk. My dad is sitting there like just not knowing what the fuck to even say about this. And so my parents go and they pick my little brother up from elementary school because he was still in elementary school. They bring him home. We're all sitting in the living room. They ask me if I know anything about this. And I'm like, no. And then they're like yelling at my little brother. And my sister starts laughing. And we all just look at her. And she's like, it was a joke, guys. Oh my God.
There is something fucking wrong with you.
And I'm like, oh my God, you have something mentally fucking wrong with you. What the fuck? No, but seriously, everybody looked at her and they're just like, what the actual fuck is wrong with this bitch? I don't know why we didn't put her in a mental hospital right then and there. Obviously, she got in a lot of trouble for that, but she didn't care. She kept starting problems between the family. Not that bad. That was the worst time, but you know, just doing things around the house and then blaming it on other people. That type of shit. Anyways, okay, moving on. Now that you guys know that, which I don't really know if it's relevant to the story, but I just thought I would tell you guys. So Mia and I were not your stereotypical twins, okay? You know, the ones that are like joint at the hips, finishing each other's sentences, and all that bullcrap that everybody who does not have a twin believes in. I mean, at one point, her and I were very, very, very close and, you know, dressing the same, had the same friend groups, all that shit. But that all changed the one day whenever I stayed home from school. I wasn't feeling well. And Mia did end up going to school this day, which was weird because usually whenever one of us was feeling sick, my parents just would assume that the other one was sick as well, so they would keep us both home from school. But anyway, so she came home, and whenever she came into the room, she was crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? What happened? And she told me that this one girl who was a little bit older than us, and nobody in school liked her because she was a fucking bitch, was bullying her in school. So the next day, I went to school. I told this girl that I wanted to fight her, which I'm not trying to make myself sound like a fucking hero or anything like that, or some type of badass, but nobody in my school wanted to fight this girl because of how many fights that she had been in, which she has lost a majority of them. Nobody wanted to fight her because they were like, damn, she's been in a lot of fights, she's probably gonna kick my ass. I didn't care. Okay, like, if I got beat up, then I got beat up. But I knew I wasn't going to get beat up because my brother didn't want to take any self-defense classes. My dad wanted my sister and I to because we're girls and he says that we need it, you know, blah, blah, blah. Which, thank you, Dad, because I beat this girl's ass, like, literally so bad. I slammed her into the toilet and the toilet fucking broke off of the wall, which led to me getting expelled. Yes. Don't do that if you do not want to move schools, period. I know you guys are probably wondering, like, how does this all tie in? Well, just, it all comes together, okay? Okay. So, yeah, anyways, looking back at this, would I do it again? Abso-fucking-lutely. I would do it again and again and again and again and again and again. Because I'm sorry, but I'm the only one allowed to bully my sibling. Fuck off. So yeah, after this, I got expelled and I ended up having to switch schools. And it's kind of funny because, like, it only took a month of me being in a different school for my sister and I to turn into two completely different people. Like, her and I started arguing every single fucking day because we shared the same room and then we ended up having different friend groups. And yeah, it's just crazy because when you're not forced to be with somebody every day, you realize how much you guys didn't have in common. I don't know. But yeah, her and I turned into two completely different people. So her and I don't really get along anymore. Now, a little bit about my younger brother, Elijah. He was super quiet, super awkward. He spent a lot of time in his bedroom in the dark playing video games or just sleeping all day. He wasn't really good at keeping up with his hygiene, so he would go to school with greasy hair and he would wear the same clothes almost 3 days in a row. Like, this kid really gave no fucks about what anybody thought about him. And I mean, good for him, but also kind of gross. And yeah, and of course the kids at school would give him shit for this. you know, him looking like a bum. And he didn't even have to tell my sister or I that he was getting bullied by these kids and what they were saying about him, because eventually, fast forward, my sister Elijah and I were all in the same high school together. So Mia and I were hearing what the other kids were saying for ourselves. I feel bad that Mia and I didn't stick up for him, but then again, all of us were like complete strangers living in the same house because we were all so different. Our family never forced us to spend time together, so we were all always doing our own thing. I was always out with my friends. Elijah was always at home, like I said, either sleeping or playing video games. Mia, I don't know what the fuck she was doing, probably just being a fucking menace to society. But by the time that we all did get into the same high school, Mia became a snotty brat, like very, very, very snotty. And everybody could tell that Mia hated that Elijah was our brother, especially the fact that people knew he was our brother, because they would make it an insult. Like, you would just be having a normal conversation with someone and then they would be like, oh, is Elijah your brother? And, you know, we would be like, yeah. And then somehow they would turn it into an insult. They would be like, oh, that kid's a weirdo, or ooh, he stinks, or something like that. Just really mean. So this caused her to dislike our brother even more than she already did. And just to give you an example of how much she disliked our brother. So our parents would usually try to make doctor, dentist, any appointments that we would have on the same day, because we were all at the high school, so they could just pick us all up at once and then take us to these appointments, and they wouldn't have to worry about doing it on different days, blah, 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 this, that, and the next, right? But Mia was very, very, very worried about being seen with myself or Elijah, because yes, she thought that I was embarrassing as well. So as soon as my mom would book the appointment, Mia would be like, Mom, you have to let me know what time you're picking us up on this day. Like, you have to. And then my mom would usually know that she's gonna be there at a certain time, so she would tell Mia, okay, I'm gonna be at the school at this time, so blah blah blah. But Mia took it a step further, because sometimes our mom wouldn't be on time. She was like, no Mom, like, you have to give me your location, I need to know when you're gonna be at the school. And she had no problem telling my parents that she was embarrassed to be seen with us. Mainly she would say him, but I knew that, like I said, it was both of us. Like, the one morning there was a huge argument between her, Elijah, and my mom, because this specific morning my mom couldn't give Mia an exact time of when she was going to be at the school. And because of this, Mia goes, okay, well, if you can't tell me what time you're going to be at the school, I'm not going. And my mom's like, yes, you are. And she was like, no, I don't want to be seen walking with him. She was like, Mom, he's embarrassing. He doesn't fucking shower. He smells so bad. And he's wearing the same fucking clothes that he wore yesterday. It's not happening. And listen, I knew that this hurt my brother's feelings. Like, whether he wanted to admit it or not, I knew it hurt his feelings. But he obviously wasn't going to show her any sign of weakness, because, you know, like I said, my sister's a bitch, so she would have been like, oh, you're crying? Really? You're crying now? Yeah. So he would just like throw shots back. It would become worse. He'd be like, yeah, Mom, please let me know what time you're coming, because I definitely don't want to be seen with the girl who sent nudes to almost the whole school. And yeah, all hell would break loose. If you can't already tell, there were very few peaceful mornings in my house, mainly because of these two. And if you're wondering why she didn't want to be seen with me, it's because whenever I moved to my new school, I made new friends, and they were considered emo, which we weren't. We literally just liked dressing in black and exploring abandoned buildings with a Ouija board at like 3 a.m. You know, nothing crazy. Sounds a little demonic, I know, but I swear it wasn't like we believed in the devil or anything. We just thought that it was creepy and fun. Okay. Moving on. So now that you guys have background information about my siblings and I, we can finally get into the night that this all started, which you guys can tell me down below in the comments if you think that I'm the one who ruined my brother's life, but I don't know. I don't think I am. I think he had issues way before I ever got involved in his life. Okay, so the one weekend, my parents had to go out of town, and my sister wanted to go with one of her friends, and my brother and I did not want to go. So they said that we didn't have to go as long as I watched my brother, meaning I wasn't allowed to go and hang out with my friends, and I basically had to stay home all weekend because this kid literally does not do anything but sit in his room. Why are they making me stay home all weekend with a 14-year-old? Well, my parents had found out that my brother was self-harming a few months ago, and ever since then, they've been super worried that if he gets the chance to, he will take his own life. So this kid does not get any teeny ounce of primacy ever, for good reason. But for me, it was annoying as fuck. So obviously, I'm upset because it's a Friday night and I want to go out with my friends. Not only that, but my friends and I spent all week planning to go to this abandoned mansion. Like, we literally went thrifting, bought refills for our Polaroid cameras and stuff like that to take pictures, and yeah. Now, of course, me being me, I find a way around this because there's no way that I'm gonna let my weekend be ruined by this. Like, what the fuck? No, absolutely not. So after my parents leave, I go into my brother's bedroom and I'm like, hey, do you by any chance want to come and hang out with my friends and I tonight? And I wasn't sure what he would say because I've never asked him to hang out with my friends and I. But of course, he said no. But I already had a backup plan in my head for if he said no. And that backup plan was to bribe him. Yes. So I was like, listen, if you come with my friends and I will buy you a new game for your computer. And y'all, it sucks having younger siblings that cannot be easily manipulated. And I know that sounds fucked up, but he made me buy the game for him before we went. Probably because he already knew that if he didn't make me buy the game before, I was going to be like, okay, you get $25, pick a game. So yeah, the game that I ended up buying for him was $85. Fuck my life. Anyways, so my friends Tyler, CJ, Madeline, Austin, and Jessica came and picked us up. I introduced all of them to my brother, and my friend Austin was using his mom's minivan. So it had third row seats, and my brother sat in the third row by himself. Now, every few minutes, I would look back and see what he was doing, and he would just be looking out the window, looking super sad. And to be honest, I didn't have much sympathy for my brother back then. Not because I didn't care about him, but it was just that I was so involved with my friends that I wasn't thinking like, oh, I hope that my brother has a good time with my friends and I tonight, considering he doesn't go out that much and he doesn't have any friends of his own. No, it was more of, well, at least he's here with me and my parents aren't going to freak out on me because I left him home alone. So yeah. So fast forward, we get there, the boys, they grab their stuff, they go inside, and the girls and I, we all get changed in the car. And then when we go in there, I saw CJ, Tyler, Austin, and my brother talking, laughing, just chatting it up. And they were teaching him how to do graffiti on the walls. And yeah, it just looked like my brother was having like a really good time. Like, the last time that I had saw my brother smile like this was probably when my parents got him his computer gaming setup like 5 years ago. Anyway, so fast forward a few hours. My girlfriends and I, we took some pictures. We spray painted some walls. Elijah had fun with the boys. And I was honestly having a good time with Elijah too. But everybody ended up getting tired, so they wanted to go home. But I wasn't ready to go home yet, so I asked them if they could drop Elijah and I off at this water tower near our house. Fast forward, they drop us off and I show him some stuff that my friends and I have written over the years, and we pretty much just talked and he really opened up to me. He was telling me a little bit about why he was self-harming and all that stuff. And not to get into too much detail, but a lot of it had to do with, you know, the kids at school bullying him and the fact that he feels like my dad doesn't love him, but we'll get into that in a minute. So fast forward to the next day, my parents and Mia all come home. They take us out to breakfast, and Elijah was telling my parents about what we did the night before. And I could tell that they were super happy because usually when we would all go out to eat, Elijah just did not engage in any conversations or anything like that, and trying to get even like one word out of him was like pulling teeth. So fast forward, we get home, and when we get home, my parents pull me aside and they're like, we're really happy that you took your brother out with you and your friends. It seems like he had a really good time, and we know that you don't always want to drag your little brother along with you to hang out with your friends, but maybe it would be nice if you brought him out with you more often. And here's the thing about my mom and my dad. My dad always wanted a boy so badly, and my mom felt like a terrible wife because she couldn't give her husband what he wanted. And this is a little bit off track, but my mom and dad had a little obsession with this psychic woman that they've been seeing since they got together. And apparently almost everything that she predicts happens. So every time that my mom would get pregnant, they would go and they would see her to find out what the sex of their baby was going to be, because obviously they didn't want my mom to be pregnant and then find out the sex of the baby and then abort it then, which I don't even know if you can abort it then, but that was what their mindset was. And it's crazy, but what's even more crazier is the fact that she predicted that my mom would have twins and they would both be girls. Like right after my mom found out that she was pregnant, they would go to this woman. And she was right about my sister and I. But before us, my mom had 2 abortions because the psychic told her that both of those were going to be girls. Now, why did my mom and dad have my sister and I? Well, because it was getting to the point where, like, they were scared that if my mom kept having abortions, she wouldn't be able to have any kids at all. So, my mom gave birth to my sister and I. After that, then they felt safer to keep trying and having abortions every time she said that it wasn't going to be a boy. Then, finally, my mom and dad went back to the psychic after one more abortion, and the psychic finally said that they were going to have a boy, which ended up being Elijah. I don't know why I keep saying Elijah. I think it's just Elijah, but yeah. I don't know if I already said this earlier, but I might be sidetracking again, or this is continuing the sidetracking. But this also ties in with the situation with them aborting babies because they were not boys. But my mom and dad used to film a ton of home videos, and no, not the ones you're thinking of. Nasty, get it out your brain. Okay. Anyways, a few years ago, my sister and I, we found a box filled with them in the attics. And there was also a VCR or a VHS player in there with them. So, you know, we took them out and we watched a few of them. And in the very first one that we watched, my dad was taking a video of my sister and I cuddled up on the couch together, sleeping. And then my mom and dad walk into the kitchen. And my dad set the camera on the counter. He must have thought that he turned it off, but he in fact did not turn it off because it captured a conversation between him and my mom about how badly he wanted a boy. This is the moment that kind of convinced me that my dad might actually be a narcissist. I don't know, you tell me what you think, because this was the conversation word for word. You know, they go into the kitchen, my mom's like, oh, I miss them being babies, but I wanted to show you something. I'm guessing she showed him a pregnancy test because he was like, oh my goodness, when did you take this? And she was like, just this morning. And he's like, oh my goodness, you're pregnant. And she's like, I know, I'm so excited. And then his tone just completely changed. And my mom's like, aren't you excited? And he's like, yeah, I'm excited, but I swear if this one's a girl, I don't even know what I'm gonna do. I keep telling you that I want a son. And then my mom goes, but what if it is a girl? I mean, like, it's proven that we can't control it. No matter how much we pray, no matter how many different positions we do, you know? And then that's when my dad's like, that's exactly why we go to the psychic. She's told us every single time before, and she was right about the girls. So we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna go, we're gonna ask her. If she says that it's a girl, you know what we have to do. If it's a boy, then great. Like, oh my goodness. And I could tell by my mom's voice in this home movie that she was really upset because she's like, I don't know, I don't feel right. Like, we can't keep doing this. She was like, we decided to have the twins and look how amazing they came out. We love them so much. I feel like no matter what it is, we're going to love them and it's going to be great. And then he flipped. Like, he wasn't screaming, but manipulation on 10. Because he goes, oh, so now you're just gonna ignore what I want? I get it, you don't care. Do you know how hard it is to be in a house full of women when you're the only guy? I work my ass off for this family, and I ask you to give me one thing, and you can't even do that. And then my mom was like, that's not fair. And then he's like, no, you wanna know what's not fair? You making me go through this over and over again. Always getting my hopes up only to find out that it's another girl. And y'all, my sister and I are listening to this and we're just like, what the fuck? Because bro, I doubt, do you not know how pregnancy works? Like, you were the only one getting your hopes up. my boy. And then he goes, what do you want me to do? Pretend to be happy? Lie? I told you before, I'm not wasting my time raising another daughter. If it's a girl, I don't want it. End of story. Obviously, this made my sister and I feel low-key like shit. Because, like, to think that you are the only one that made it out of all of your now dead siblings because your parents were afraid that they weren't going to be able to have any more kids, and that's the only reason why they kept you? Yeah, that's a little, it's a little trauma. Sprinkle a little trauma in there, you know. And then the end of the conversation, it was pretty much my mom saying, okay, I'll make the appointment. And then my dad was like, thank you, you know, like, this is the right thing. I promise. Like, do you? I mean, I guess if she doesn't want to fucking hear him complain, then yeah, it's the right thing to do, but what the fuck? So yeah, that pregnancy, the psychic was like, oh, you're having a boy finally, congratulations. And then she popped out Elijah. I'm honestly very creeped out about how she predicted my sister and my brother and I. But yeah. So, you know, my mom pops out Elijah, but what happened? That was not the son that my dad wanted, because Elijah was what my dad would call him a loser. He'd be like, he's a fucking loser. All he does is sit in his room all day and play video games. And I feel really bad for my brother, because my dad would just say this and not give a fuck that Elijah could hear him. He would say it a lot so that way Elijah could hear him. I'm pretty sure that he was hoping Elijah would think to himself, wow, I'm really disappointing my dad with my life choices right now. Maybe I should change. Maybe I should become a D1 athlete so that way he'll love me. But weirdly enough, that day after breakfast, my dad started actually being a father to Elijah. Like, he started taking him out fishing with him and taking him to the sports bars to watch sports with my dad's friends and him. Did my brother like sports still? No, I think he was just happy that my dad was actually paying attention to him, because you know who doesn't want to be loved by their parents? Obviously, this was over the span of a few months, and I'm not telling you guys that my brother's depression was cured, because it wasn't. It was far from it, but it was a start to him getting better. I realized he was coming out of his room more and spending time around the family more, taking care of himself, hygiene-wise. But not only was my dad taking him out, but he would come out with my friends and I think that that really helped. Anyways, so fast forward a couple months. The one day I go into my brother's room, and per usual, I'm like, hey, do you want to come out with me and my friends today? And to my surprise, he says no. And I'm like, are you okay? Like, usually he always says yes. Unless he is one friend that he usually games with, and that's whenever he'll tell me no, like, I'm gonna game with my friends tonight, and I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care. But he was like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm just gonna hang out with one of my other friends. And I'm like, and then he's like, yeah, I made other friends. And I'm like, you know what, period. I'm not mad. Go hang out with your new friends. I'm proud of you. Period. So fast forward like 2 weeks later, I'm hanging out with my usual group of friends, and they're like, where's Elijah at? You know, like, he hasn't been around in a while. And I'm like, oh, he's actually making some new friends. Like, I'm really proud of him. And everybody's like, oh, that's awesome, you know, good for him. And I could tell that one of my friends was upset, because I know that she developed a little crush on Elijah. No, she's not 17. She's actually 16, so there wasn't that much of an age gap between them. But yeah, that's besides the point. After I say this, Tyler's like, yeah, you might want to keep an eye on who he's been hanging out with, which was super cryptic and just fucking creepy. And I'm like, why? And Tyler goes, well, my younger brother told me that Elijah's been hanging out with this kid Parker that's in their grade. And I'm like, who the fuck is Parker, and why is your younger brother worried about who my brother's hanging out with? That's a little bit weird if you ask me. And Tyler's like, one, it's not weird, especially whenever he's worried about your younger brother. Anyways, then my other friends chime in, and they're like, dude, do you like live under a rock or something? I'm like, no, why? And they're like, there's something really fucking wrong with that kid Parker. And I'm not gonna lie, I start getting defensive, especially now that I'm a little bit closer with Elijah, well, a lot closer than we were before, because look at how fucked up and weird everybody thought my little brother was, and now look at him. So then I start getting an attitude, and I'm like, okay, well, excuse me if I'm not buying into this, because everybody said the same thing about my little brother, and turns out he really just needed some friends. So maybe this kid just needs some friends, and out of everyone, I wouldn't expect you guys to judge somebody, because we know what it's like for people to call us fucking weird and shit. Don't be a bully, motherfuckers. Okay, y'all, I'm going to put a trigger warning in here now. There is going to be talk about animal abuse. Nothing too gruesome. It's just about what happened in this situation. But I know that this makes a lot of us uncomfortable, so if you do not want to listen to this part, you can skip to this part in the video. So this is whenever they tell me something that apparently everybody else in school, in our neighborhood, town, knew except for me, which is so weird because usually I'm caught up on all the fucking tea. Apparently not this time. But they tell me that this kid Parker a few years ago used to go around the neighborhood stealing people's dogs out of their backyards, and he would take them to the train tracks and tie them down there and take videos of trains passing by and hitting them. Yeah, some really fucked up shit. Y'all, I'm not even gonna lie. When I read this part of the story, I literally hugged my dog so tight and cried because what the actual fuck is wrong with people? And like, oh my goodness, if I ever saw anybody do this, that's probably the day that I receive a life sentence. Because how can you hurt an innocent animal that literally does nothing but love you and looks at you as their protector and their person? And yeah. Anyways, so then I say to them, I'm like, okay, look guys, if you're fucking with me, I just want you to know that one, that is pretty messed up. And then Madeline goes, dude, he literally got arrested for this shit. And he did it 7 times before he got caught. End of trigger warning. Obviously, the second that I get home, I confront Elijah about hanging out with this kid, because if this kid's in his grade, clearly he knows what this kid did. But then again, I wasn't sure because of the fact that my brother, well, we know he was a loser and wasn't really involved in all that school shit. Anyways, but literally my brother was like just coming out of his whole fucking depression and self-harm thing that he was going through. He does not need to be hanging out with a fucking psychopath. No, not at all. I feel like the lighting is so dark. I'm gonna get like a ring light for behind my camera. This lighting right here is not enough. Ugh. Anyways. So yeah, I go and I confront him and he's like, okay, well, he doesn't do that anymore. And I'm like, hold the fuck up. I snap back at him and I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck if he doesn't do that shit anymore. You're not hanging out with him. Are you fucking crazy? And of course, me knowing almost everything there is to know about serial killers, I go on a whole tangent and I'm like, hurting animals is literally one of the biggest warning signs of a psychopath. Do you know how many serial killers started out torturing animals before they moved on to literal human beings? There's actual research on this shit. And saying that he doesn't do those things anymore, which, mind you, he only stopped because he got caught, does not mean shit. Like, you think this is just some messed up thing that he did, like fucking robbing somebody or something? No, this is like full-on murder. People like that do not have empathy, and most of the time they don't just wake up one day deciding to be normal. Be so fucking for real. But it seemed like he still wasn't getting the point, and listen, I'm not a snitch or anything, okay? I'm very far from it, but I did tell him if he did not stop hanging out with him, I would tell our parents. And that's whenever he goes and he's like, wow, I finally start making friends and you're gonna tell on me for it? But y'all, I was not about to fucking fall for this guilt trip bullshit. No. No, 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 no. I'm not the one. So I went downstairs and I told my parents. Yes, I did. I don't care what anybody thinks. At this point in my brother's life, with him in recovery for his depression and stuff like that, and him actually recovering, I was not about to let this shit fucking get in the way of that. So yeah, I went downstairs and I told my parents. So they go up to his room and they basically tell him, if you hang out with this kid again, you're grounded. And that includes us taking away your computer and everything, which is something they've never really done because they never really had to. My brother never got grounded for anything unless it was like his grades or something, but it was super easy for him to get those back up and get his computer back like literally within a day. And I was surprised because my parents also knew about this kid because apparently it was all over Facebook and all over the news. Anyway, so for the next few days, he wasn't coming out of his room. The only time that we would see him was whenever my parents would force him to come out and eat dinner. But then the one night at like 3 or 4 in the morning, there was a loud banging on the front door, which of course woke almost everyone in the house up except for Mia. So my parents go to the front door and I go and hide on the stairs to listen to what's going on. And when they open the door, there's 2 police officers standing there with my brother. Obviously, my parents are freaking out. They're like, what the hell happened? Is he okay? Blah, blah, blah. And one of the officers said that they found my brother and his friends at the train tracks, which when they said that, my heart literally dropped because I was like, do not tell me that my brother was participating in Parker's fucked up antics. Thankfully, that was not the case, but they did say that a woman and her husband called the police after they watched my brother and his friends playing on the train tracks. And what do I mean by playing on the train tracks? I mean that they were driving their car onto the train tracks and they would wait for a train to get close and then they would hurry up and pull off the train tracks once it was like 20 feet away. Maybe that's over dramatic, but I don't know. And they did this multiple times. But that wasn't even the worst part, apparently. Right when the police got there, they weren't just driving on the train tracks waiting for a train. No, they were laying on the train tracks waiting for a train to pass. And this was a pretty busy railroad. So it wasn't like they were waiting there for an hour for a train to come by. No, there was a train going over this railroad every like 20 or 25 minutes. Anyway, so yeah, they're at the door. Elijah's with them. And listen, my sister and I do not get along, but we didn't hate each other. So I secretly record the conversation between my mom, dad, and the police so that way I could show it to her in the morning, you know, catch her up on the tea. This girl did send a recording of the conversation between her parents and the police to me, but I will not be playing it, y'all, because I don't know how any of that legal stuff works, and I'm not trying to get in trouble, so I'll just tell y'all what was said. So my parents send my brother up to his room when the police are like, yeah, we would like to talk to you guys. After Elijah comes upstairs, goes to his room, one of the officers is like, listen, we don't want to overstep, but we need to talk to you about one of the kids that your son was found with, Parker. And my mom and dad were like, this is the kid that was on the news for doing all that shit, right? And they're like, yeah. And my parents are like, well, we already told him that he needed to stop hanging around that kid. And the police were like, well, obviously he didn't listen because we found him there with that kid. And they were like, listen, that kid has a lot of behavioral issues. We've had more than a few run-ins with him. We're talking serious behavioral issues, vandalism, animal cruelty, petty theft, trespassing, and those are only the things that we know about. Like, we're not talking about a kid that's just pulled a prank here and there. This kid has a history of violence, and it's only escalated over time. And what makes it worse for everybody else is his parents don't even care. All we're saying is to keep an eye out on your son because Parker has pulled a lot of kids down with him over the years, and kids like Parker look for kids that are vulnerable and, you know, they make them feel like they belong and then they pull them into a mess. Next thing you know, these kids are facing real consequences. And my dad was like, I don't care if I have to chain Elijah to his bed, he will not be hanging out with that kid again. And then, you know, the police were like, that's the right call. Just keep a close eye on him. If anything else happens, call us. We'd rather step in sooner rather than later. So fast forward, the next 3 days, my parents dragged Elijah's mattress into their room and they forced him to sleep in there, which understandable. And my brother was one of those kids that was pretty nonchalant whenever they're getting punished for something. Like, he didn't try to argue with them about them moving his mattress into their room and forcing him to sleep in there. He just didn't care, to be honest. But on the 4th day, they put his mattress back in his room. Let's just say that that was an awful idea on their part, because that same night at around 1:30 in the morning, Mia walked past Elijah's room and she realized that his bed was empty. So she comes into my room and she's shaking me and hitting me to wake me up, which I'm not gonna lie, the hitting was completely unnecessary. Like, I would have woken up. But yeah, anyways, she goes, "Bitch, wake up, Elijah's not here." And so I hurry up and get up and run to Elijah's room. What do you know? He's not there. So then we go to my parents' room, we wake them up, and we're like, "Elijah's not here." Side note, I looked at what Mia was wearing and I just thought that it was hilarious because she's literally wearing a mini skirt and a crop top and heels, and you could definitely tell that she was ready to go out, well, sneak out. And yeah, I just thought that it was funny because she's telling on Elijah for the same thing that she's doing, but obviously completely different circumstances. Yes, he is the one who is hanging out with the psychopath. Yeah. So we all rush into Elijah's room. We look on his bed. His phone is sitting there, which is weird because he would have brought his phone with him if he was leaving. So we're like, now what the fuck is really going on? So then I hurry up. I plug in his phone because it's dead, and my dad gets onto Elijah's computer, and we all knew the password to all of Elijah's stuff because, like I said, he was not allowed to have an ounce of privacy. But then the worst possible thing pops up on the screen whenever my dad opens his computer that could have popped up. It literally said goodbye letters. There was a file open that said goodbye letters, and it had every single one of our names on a letter. My mom literally fainted, and I knew what was going through everyone's mind at that point. We all were sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, he ran away and left his phone here so that way nobody would be able to find him because he's going to end his life. That is really truly what we thought. Like, he left and he was going to end his life. So then I go onto Elijah's phone. When I see that it turns on, I see that the last text message he sent was to Parker, and their conversation pretty much went like, "This is Parker." He was like, "Hey, do you want to come to the train tracks?" And Elijah goes, "No, I'm probably gonna stay in tonight. I'm already in deep shit with my parents and I don't want to argue with them anymore." And then Parker goes, "Please, it'll just be for an hour. I have to wake up early in the morning anyways." And so Elijah goes, "Okay, fine. Let me know when you're here." And from what we can see, Parker texted Elijah that he was at the house at like 1 o'clock. So only 40 minutes before, or 30 minutes before we all found out that he was missing. So Mia grabs her phone and she's like, "I swear Parker just posted something on his story like 10 minutes ago." She goes onto her phone and she's looking through his story, and one of the pictures that he posted, which was literally 10 minutes ago, was a picture of a broken glass bottle on a floor in an abandoned house. How do I know it's an abandoned house? Because my friend and I's graffiti is on the wall in the back. So I tell my dad, I'm like, "Yeah, I know exactly where that is. My friends and I go there all the time." And so my dad looks at me and he asks me, "Well, what do we do? Like, should we call the cops? Do we go there? Do we let him hang out with his friend?" Because, like, he technically didn't run away. He's just doing what teenagers do, sneaking out and hanging out with one of his friends. And I'm like, well, this kid's a fucking weirdo, and maybe we should call the police on the way there because I don't really know the address of the place. I just know how to get there by memory. Yeah, I don't know why my dad asked me, a 17-year-old, if he should call the cops because his son is missing. It was kind of a moment where I looked at him and I'm like, huh? Anyways, whatever. So we all get in the car, and on the way there, we're seeing tons of police cars flying past us, and we realize they're going the same exact way to the abandoned building that we're going. So we get there, and when we're pulling down the street to this abandoned house, we can see smoke coming up from the house. And then we see fire trucks and ambulances there and police cars there blocking off the street. And fast forward, my dad tries getting out of the car, going over there, and the police are like, "No, stay here." And he's like, "That's my son. You know, like, my son is in that building with that kid." Yeah, long story short, we see Parker getting dragged out from the woods. On the opposite side of the street is the house. So, like, you could definitely tell that he tried to run. He had mud and shit all over him. And then they're carrying my brother out of the house. We go to the hospital, and we hear that Elijah's alive, but he's in a fucking coma. He's still alive, but he's in a coma due to hypoxia, I think it is. Yeah, hypoxia. And if you don't know what that is, basically Parker lit that house on fire, and he had my brother like handcuffed in there so he could not like move. And because of this and the smoke from the fire, there wasn't enough oxygen getting to my brother's brain, which can cause severe damage and, yes, put somebody in a coma. So that's why he was in a coma. Obviously, we're all crying, we're all really upset, but then my parents, I was not expecting them to react the way that they did, because while we're all sitting there, all I hear from my mom is, "This is all your fault." And I look up from the ground to look around and see who the fuck she's talking to, because I thought it wasn't me. But then I look at her and I'm like, "Me?" And she's like, "Yeah." She was like, "You should have just left him alone." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" She was like, "If you hadn't gone through his messages." And then I stop right there because I'm like, wait, I thought that she meant this was my fault about the fact that he started hanging out with me and my friends, and then he started hanging out with this Parker kid. No, my mom would have rather him died in there than be in a coma, which he came out of, but she would have rather him died in there. So now I'm really like, what the fuck? And I look at them and I'm like, Elijah was hanging out with a psychopath and I'm the problem. You would have rather your son had been murdered than us find him and him be in the hospital being nursed back to health. Of course, neither of them had anything to say. I realized that they wanted somebody to blame and I was the easiest target. Fast forward 3 weeks after the fire, that same night, Parker was arrested, like I said, but they charged him with arson, attempted murder, reckless endangerment, and kidnapping. And they found a ton of shit in his car. They found a lighter, accelerant. If you don't know what accelerant is, it's pretty much just something that causes a fire, basically. So if they were to find like a can of gasoline with the lighter, yeah, I think. If that's not it, just let me know down below in the comments. But I'm almost positive that's what it is. But they also found a suicide note written with Elijah's name at the bottom, but it wasn't Elijah's handwriting. Anyways, so I visited my brother every single day in the hospital until he woke up. And when he finally did, my parents showed up, and mind you, they only went to the hospital to visit him like 3 times, but they can make time to go and hang out with their friends and stuff like that. Weird, if you ask me. But yeah, whenever they show up, they tell me that they don't want me anywhere near him. They kicked me out of the house, and every single one of them blocked me, except for Mia. And the reasoning was the fact that I influenced Elijah to hang out with someone like Parker. Yeah. My parents and I haven't spoke in a long time. Neither have Elijah and I. But moral of the story, people will always find a person to blame when they can't handle the truth about themselves. It is easier to point fingers than face the possibility that they may have been the problem, because taking accountability means accepting fault. Because taking accountability means admitting fault, and some people would rather live in denial than with guilt and try to work on themselves. Okay, everybody, that is the end of today's story time. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more, maybe hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want to know whenever I post my next video, make sure to click that bell. And if you want to know how to send in your anonymous story time, or you want to send in your anonymous story time, make sure to click the links down below in the description. But other than that, I will see you guys next week with a new story time.